I want to welcome everyone to SurgeX Power Hour. If you have any questions along the way, please use the chat box functionality within GoToWebinar, and we will answer those at the end of the presentation. So hello everyone. Again, my name is Vince Luciani. I am the Senior Sales Engineer here at SurgeX. Welcome to today's webinar introducing the new SurgeX LiISO series of UPSs. That is Line Interactive Isolation Transformers, what that stands for. SurgeX is committed to providing training of all types to our dealer partners, which includes webinars on power distribution and disturbances, as well as best practices for providing a solid power foundation for your AV and IT systems. In fact, we're active partners with both Avixa and CEDIA and have presentations on how to improve AC electrical power at your installations that are available online for both CTS and CEDIA Academy credit. In addition, we are an active partner with our dealers. If during the project planning stage you ever need a second pair of eyes on the power distribution and protection aspects of your design, please feel free to reach out to me through your sales representative. Or if you have data from your SurgeX Envision power diagnostic tool that you need help to interpret, again, feel free to reach out. We are here to help. So today's webinar is the introduction to the SurgeX LiISO series of UPSs. Before we get started, I want to make you aware of webinars we have completed thus far. We have webinars scheduled on the second to last Thursday of the month at this same time, 11:30 a.m. Eastern and 8:30 a.m. Pacific. As you can see, we have covered some important topics. For instance, if you don't know what an envision tool is, you can go to the Go to Stage page here listed and get an introduction to that very powerful tool. Today's webinar is, of course, on our new line of line interactive UPSs with integrated isolation transformer. I have Jimmy Patchke, National Sales Manager for SurgeX Residential, with me today. Hello, Jimmy.
Hey, Vince, man, you have me pumped up, man. I'm all powered up, ready to go with this one.
Powered up, very good. All right, so let's get started. Jimmy, let's jump right in. Tell us about this new line interactive UPS with isolation transformer.
Yeah, Vince. Well, I'll tell you. Last month we had a chance to sit down with this thing at a WeWork, social distance and masked up. Vince and I got to take an intimate look at this bad boy, and I will say that I'm very, very happy with the build quality, the look and feel, but also the performance. You know, Vince had brought in that oscilloscope. We were able to check the output of this thing. It really gave us a chance to sit down and figure out, you know, what will the value be to the integration market out there, both in the CEDIA channel as well as in the Avixa space and Infocom space. But it looks like it's going to be a good family of products to add to the plethora of UPS offerings we already have.
Yeah. It's a line interactive unit, so it's going to have that line regulation built in. It's a 10% line regulation, true sine wave output. We checked that out on the scope. It was a great looking output. It's got that built-in isolation transformer, and I got a slides coming up that'll delve deep into why you need an isolation transformer, what it does to you. But you know, like our OL series, front load, hot swappable batteries, easy. You know, I think that we pay a lot of attention to that. We don't want this to be a problem for our dealer partners when it comes time to do the battery maintenance. It's very easy, all accessible from the front, and of course it accepts the extension battery cabinets, up to 8 of them. And we have an optional SNMP card in there as well. Anything else you want to add, Jimmy?
Well, I will say that a couple of things to point out, just so they're not surprises. The units are all the same depth. And so as long as you're operating within a rack depth that's, call it less than 24 inches and around 22, which I think is pretty common. This should fit no problem at all. And that's whether we're looking at the 1400 plus VA unit up to 3000 VA. They're all the same depth. And then we're going to talk about how this product is definitely quieter than an online dual conversion UPS, but there are some instances where the noise will kick up. So we'll talk about that as well.
Very good. So in the line, we have 3 models, 3 different power ratings.
Yeah, you know, it's one of those things I get asked all the time, you know, should I use the 20 amp version? So we have a 15, a 20, and a 30 amp shown here on the screen. And really, at the end of the day, it's about what is the load. And thank goodness, you know, we don't have to rely on trying to find the time to go and look up each product's, you know, max current draw. If you want very quickly to determine what your total load's going to be on the critical devices that you want to put on a battery backup, plug them all into an envision and check out what the current draw looks like at turn on, and then what does that level out at RMS, and use that as your guide, or use the owner's manuals as a guide, or look at the back of the product to figure out what the max draws would look like, and then go from there and right size the UPS. Obviously, to use the 30 amp piece, we're going to need a 30 amp breaker and a 30 amp wall outlet to power this 3000 VA unit, or 2760 is the actual spec. The 2200 piece will be a 20 amp rated product. You're going to have a 20 amp circuit, a 20 amp wall outlet. Make sure you've got both of those. And then the 15 amp obviously will work with that NEMA 15 that most of us are pretty comfortable with.
Yep, very good. And this guy, the input connector on here is an IEC, removable or detachable cord with an IEC type connector on there. So let's talk a little bit about isolation transformers. You know, so what, you know, why do you need an isolation transformer? It all stems from the fact that neutral to ground, or neutral and ground are actually bonded or connected together at a single point in an electrical system, and that happens inside the main breaker panel. Therefore, the voltage between neutral and ground theoretically should be 0 volts. Anytime electrically you have something tied together, they're at the same potential, and if you put a voltmeter across it, it should be 0. However, the further your outlet is located away from the main breaker panel, the more wire resistance buildup can occur. High current loads, will pull current through the wire resistance and causes a voltage drop across the wire, and it reduces the voltage at the output. But at the same time, as the current returns down the neutral path, a similar voltage drop occurs across the impedance in that neutral wire, and that is what neutral to ground voltage is. And remember, neutral to ground are connected together, so that again that should be 0 between there theoretically. So if you had other equipment plugged into this outlet, or possibly if there was another outlet on this branch circuit, which is a very standard practice in a lot of electrical installations, that second piece of equipment would see this neutral to ground voltage. So often, if a neutral to ground voltage is caused by a piece of equipment, that piece of equipment doesn't respond to it, but sometimes another one, and it depends on the equipment. If it's especially if it's like a microprocessor-based piece of equipment, it could be sensitive to these neutral to ground voltages, and that's where problems occur. So what can you do about it? One option would be to run a new larger gauge wire. This would reduce the wire resistance, and thus the voltage drop would reduce. However, running a new wire is often not feasible. It's already in the wall, and you can't get to it. Another option to solve this issue is to use this isolation transformer, and preferably you use it kind of at the point of use, meaning at the rack location. When an isolation transformer is used, a new neutral to ground bond or connection can be safely established in accordance with the National Electric Code. This new neutral to ground bond is now much closer to the point of use, and it reduces that wire resistance, not only removing the neutral to ground voltage that's due to the current flow, but it also nullifies any high frequency neutral to ground noise that might be present So, but don't make the mistake of thinking that you can just add a neutral to ground bond at the outlet without using an isolation transformer. This is a safety shock hazard, and it violates both the National Electric Code and UL standards. You know, they want a separate path for that ground to travel down, you know, we can get into that in other webinars. We cover that, but do not connect that neutral to ground at the point of use, unless, of course, the isolation transformer provides that for you. So, Jimmy, today, of course, we're highlighting the LiISO series that you see there in the middle column, but it might be a good time to talk about the entire line of SurgeX rack mount UPSs and when you use each one.
Yeah, and Vince, I really appreciate the breakdown of the neutral to ground voltage and how we might run into issues. I can say that a lot of times as a sales manager, I get asked, you know, which should I use? What should I use? And at the end of the day, what we're hoping for is that dealers become more aware of their power quality situation at the job site. And the way to best assess that from our perspective would be utilizing tools like the Fluke that you see pictured in your illustration, or even better, just because it's pretty available and very simple to use, is our Envision diagnostic tool. So put that on a job site, let it sit there for 30 days if you can. That's our ideal. And then figure out, are you dealing with voltage stability issues? Do you have a neutral to ground voltage problem? Are you getting a lot of surges? Those are all questions that we can help you address. But what we wouldn't want to do is we wouldn't want to guess. We wouldn't want to throw a box into a job site and think that we're managing that the most appropriate way when we don't know for sure.
Sure.
And so Envision can really help us, make that determination. And once the determination is made, then we can say, oh, your voltage is fluctuating like crazy. And the best product that we have to stabilize voltage would be the use of an online dual conversion UPS, and it's very stable voltage output at all times. We're at plus or minus 1% of whatever the voltage input will be your output.
And that would be the OL series that you see on the left-hand column. That's the full time. You guys have heard us talk about it a million times. It takes the AC coming out of the wall, turns it into DC. When it's in the DC mode, it's charging the batteries, but it's also the AC to DC converter is strong enough, hefty enough to actually power the inverter stage, which is the DC to AC operation. So basically, with that OL series, we are regenerating the power right on the site, and it's got so many positive attributes. One of them being no relay switching, right? When the power goes out and that AC is removed, the battery just kind of takes over instantaneously, and there's no relay inside. So it's a great solution. It solves those voltage fluctuation issues. But like we said, Jimmy, when we were at that WeWorks and we plugged the Envision into the outlets on the we weren't in a very tall building. I think we were only on the 3rd floor. But we had terrible neutral ground voltage in that particular conference room.
Oh, I remember we plugged in Envision. We had something like 40 volts on the neutral to ground, and what was awesome was having that real world example. And we even were recording videos that day. I'm pretty sure we captured that.
Yeah.
So look for that on a future go-to stage quick video. But we were able to plug the line interactive unit with the integrated isolation transformer in and drop that neutral to ground voltage down to well below 1 volt. I think we were at 0.125 or 0.233.
Yeah.
It was awesome to see that real world, because I think often, Vince, I'll hear things like, I'm in a corporate environment and I'll hear, well, we don't have those kinds of power quality issues in commercial spaces. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, here again, we did real world at a WeWork corporate building, and there was more than just WeWork in that building, but also in residential, I hear things like, well, we're not going to have an issue because we've asked for a dedicated 20 amp run. And I'm like, well, that's great. But as in Vince's illustration points to us that dedicated 20 amp run is going to go back to that sub panel or that mains panel. And then it's all intertwined with, whatever else is tied to that ground, and neutral's all bonded together. So hopefully it's a dedicated 20 amp run. It will be probably cleaner than if it were coming off a ceiling fan load, a lighting fixture.
Oh, definitely.
Which is, but we have seen, Vince, plenty of those logs that come in from the field using the envision where we get that high preponderance of neutral to ground voltage. And then we're scratching our head going, well, we could have a loose neutral, we could have a missing ground, we could have another load tied together with that AV load that you thought was dedicated. And so if and when those instances come up, sometimes I hear, hey, Jimmy, we want to go to the electrician, we want to go to the utility, and maybe we did, and it's going to take a while. I remember one time a dealer told me, an integrator told me it was going to take 6 months for the local utility to fix an issue with a corroded transformer outside the building. Yeah. And so what to do? And so the homeowner was like, hey, can you solve my problem right now? And of course we were able to do that.
Yeah.
Back then it was with the utilization of a retrofit of 2 large format UPSs installed in that job. But bring it down from 10 and 15 kVA single phase large format very bulky units to something you can put in the rack with that integrated isolation transformer, reestablishing that neutral to ground bond to help mitigate for that issue that Envision helped us find.
Yeah.
And then lastly, we do have that LI2, which I guess at the end of the day, what I've been used to saying to folks is, oh, okay, the online dual conversion is the one you want because it's the one that's going to provide us, that AC to DC conversion back to AC, very stable on its voltage output, like we said. That's a great focus point for us. You're going to want to add surge elimination to the OL series. You're going to want to add surge elimination in front of the LI with ISO series. But the LI2 will be a dead quiet unit until power goes out or we drop down below the threshold or above the threshold on our input, and we move to battery to try to, get us at 120 on the voltage output and over to battery until the load diminishes that battery all the way. But what's cool is the Li2 has surge elimination built into it. So if maybe the budget doesn't allow, spacing doesn't allow, maybe it's in close proximity to an end user, then the Li2 is a very compact, very quiet product to utilize. Is it the best UPS technology? It's not the best UPS technology. I think, in my opinion, Vince, given the logs that we see, most of what we're dealing with all throughout the country are voltage fluctuations. Hell, not just in North America. You take Europe into that equation as well. Most of what we're dealing with are voltage fluctuations. Occasionally, we hear about neutral to ground voltage issues, which can be solved hopefully via electrician or utility if it's coming from the service side. But if we don't want to wait for that, if we can't wait for it, we're going to probably tell you, hey, go with the LI with ISO. And then the LI2 credenza applications and the other
because it's so small. It's very compact, and I know a lot of our commercial dealer partners utilize that Li2 quite often because they need to put it in a credenza that's in a conference room, and it's going to be within earshot of the end user, and the Li2 is a great a great option. The one thing, 2 points I want to make here at the end. One is we know that choosing the right UPS for a specific application, could be daunting, but we're here to help. If you ever have any questions about which one do I need to use, there's a lot that we take, because we work with it every day. There's a lot more that we think about when choosing one of these things. So always, reach out through your sales rep, and they can get a hold of me, and I will absolutely help you figure out whether you need one of our large format UPSs or one of these point of use rack mounts. But the second point that I want to make is something, Jimmy, that we talked about when we were over at the WeWorks. First of all, Jimmy and I are very happy we went to WeWorks. It was the only field trip the both of us had in 3 months. So it was great to get out of it was great to get out of it. But one of the points we made was all of these UPSs have one thing in common, and that is when they are not being used in battery backup mode, they are still providing value to you, right? The OL series, even though you're not on battery mode, the power is still there. It's acting as this great voltage regulator. The LiISO series, that guy is giving you an isolation transformer at the point of use, even though you're not in battery backup mode. So you're getting value out of this thing 24/7. And then the Li2, you've got SurgeX built into the thing, so you're getting value out of it 24/7. So it's kind of a unique feature to the SurgeX line of UPSs. So Jimmy, anything else you want to add?
Well, we didn't really dive into that sine wave. I know we talked about, we had the oscilloscope. We will have a video to show, and I think I would probably urge anyone that's interested, certainly folks that have joined this WebEx are probably interested in this topic. Look back to our GoToStage site, in the coming days. Look for the video that shows the sine wave output of the new Li with ISO as compared with the OL series. Both of those sine waves are great, by the way. The Li2, it's a good value product, but one of the things that we have shown historically is that when you transfer to battery, that sine wave is quite a bit different. And so, yes, it costs more money to get an isolation transformer inside a UPS. It costs more money to be able to give us that stable voltage in an online double conversion UPS. You still have to buy protection for those two pieces. So I hope we've identified, the differentiation between these three families, right? These three technologies, because the Li2 really isn't a family; it's all by itself. But the Li with ISO and the OL series certainly are families of product. I think we've identified that enough. But Vince, do you want to talk about that sine wave in a more technical aspect?
Well, sure. In order to take a DC, which is a direct current, which is a voltage level that stays constant over time, you take that and you want to turn it into an AC, which is an alternating current. Which if you think about that AC sine wave, what's it actually doing? It's starting at 0 volts, it's peaking up to 170, coming back down to the 0 volt, going down to minus 170, and it does that 60 times a second. And that is what we call in North America 120 volt AC. And creating that out of a DC signal is not trivial. And it takes some electronics, it takes some size, it creates heat in order to do that transformation. So in order to make a design a little bit more compact, some manufacturers use what's called a modified sine wave or a step wave output. And it is still an alternating current waveform, but it is not quite as pristine as the sine waves get out of the other units. Most electronics, it still works okay, but it's the compact size that you get out of that. So again, just depending on what you need, we've got the product line for you. So at this point, Robert, our guy that's manning the station there, do we have any questions that people have given to us here?
The majority of the questions are on the differences between our units and whether or not any of them are being discontinued, which you basically answered. So I think you covered them in your presentation.
Yeah, and just to add clarity to make sure, all of these products will be available, will continue to be available. The Li2 does not go away. Actually, that model just came to us last summer, which is pretty cool. The online dual conversions continue in the OL series. The LiISO product will be readily available within days of this WebEx. So we're talking September. We'll take orders. We'll ship immediately after getting those orders. Price points, our online dual conversion product goes from $2,600 roughly retail down to $1,300. That Li2 product was $1,500 retail, and our integrated pieces, the line interactive with isolation transformers, will go from $5,500 retail to $3,000 down to from the 30 amp down to the 15 amp product. And so obviously pricing will be available by contacting your representative, and availability, we are looking at September. And speaking of September, Vince, what are we going to be talking about in September?
Actually, I don't have a topic yet for September, and so if there's something you guys want to talk about in September, please drop us a line. We'd love to hear from you. But I do see there was one more question here, and just so we can clarify, it says, can you discuss the applications of where the LI would be used versus the LI, or the LiISO versus the LI versus the online? So, I think where the LiISO and its superior noise, neutral to ground noise elimination would work really well is if you needed a really quiet AC power supply, power source, possibly for a reference theater system, or if you had a recording studio. We had one application of someone that needed a UPS for a broadcast truck. And since that broadcast truck was, running off of either a generator or, power, that was being connected externally, from a building or something like, in that broadcast truck, that isolation transformer was a great thing, because that broadcast vehicle had, so much noise issues on the AC power line, neutral to ground noise specifically. The OL series, is our bread and butter product. We see envision logs coming in, and we'll see the voltage variations, right? The way that the envision works, for those of you that don't know about the envision tool is a plug-in device that you plug it in and you leave it there, and it collects data over time, historical data as to the voltage level. And if you have a load plugged into it, it will give you historical information on the current draw. But that voltage information, it records the voltage over time, and it can go back 138 days and tell you what happened in the past. And when we see these logs, invariably we see that that voltage fluctuation is a persistent, common problem all over the U.S. And Jimmy, I think you can attest that. Have you ever seen an envision log where the voltage didn't vary to some degree? And
I think three times since 2014, we've been able to say you've got no issues with the power. And
yeah, and that's good too. By the way, you remember one of the times?
Yep.
The voltage was between 121 and 120 for like 30 days. And I called the dealer. I said, "Are you sure you didn't plug this into the OL series, because this voltage is too perfect?" And he said, "Oh, was I supposed to plug that in the last?" No, that goes in the wall. Yeah, we don't want to see we know the output of the OL series to be perfect. So he transferred over the wall.
It is rare.
Yeah.
It's rare for us not to see fluctuation in voltage. That's absolutely
right. I think that, the thing is that we don't realize that the power company has a very wide range of what they think is good voltage. It can vary. 120 volt service can go anywhere from 110 up to 127, and within that window, they call that is pristine power. And and I think that if the voltage level is between there, it's a 17 volt swing. When we see those envision logs, we qualify. We look at it a little bit more in depth and just see how often it's fluctuating and to what level it's fluctuating. Sometimes we see the high end go up in the high 130s and the lows go down in the 90s. And when you see that persistent over time, that is usually an indication of a neutral, loose neutral issue that's in there. So, getting back to the question, when do you use which one? The OL series is great for fluctuation issues. The LiISO series is great for neutral to ground issues. The Li2 is really more of a form factor play where you need something compact and you need to put it in a credenza, and it's going to be quieter than the other two. So that's what we got there. So, well, Jimmy, I think that about sums it up for this edition of the Power Hour. The new Line Interactive Isolation Transformer series is a great addition to the SurgeX toolbox of power protection, power quality improvement, and power management tools. Again, Jimmy, thank you very much for your time. The Power Hour is brought to you on the second to the last. It's usually the third or fourth Thursday of every month, and like we said, the next one is scheduled to be September 24th. So pencil us in. We'll figure out what we're going to talk about then. Jimmy, just a note for you, September 24th is my birthday, so you can ship that bottle of Pappy to my home address. Since we don't
always start high, Vince. Always start high.
Yeah. And I don't want the 10-year Pappy. I want the good stuff. So, and I need to say, remember about our previous Power Hour webinars. They had great information on there. They're online at this Go to Stage channel that you see here. What did we, we talked about it before, but we went over the Access Elite. We've done over the Envision. We looked at the Squid in the past. So go check those out. All right. Again, Jimmy, thank you very much. And thank you guys for joining us.
My pleasure.